I was 19 when my mother sold my future without even telling me. Not in words, not in money, but in a signature on a paper I never saw. And I only found out on the day I thought my life was finally starting. It was supposed to be my engagement day. Simple, small, just a few relatives, tea, smiles. At least, that's what I believed. I was standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my dress. Not expensive, but mine. The only thing in my life that felt like my own choice. My mother walked in, looked at me, and didn't smile. She just said, "Don't get too comfortable. This isn't your decision." I laughed nervously. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. When I stepped into the living room, everyone was already seated, but something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too planned. My fiancé, our eyes sat there avoiding my eyes. And next to him, a man I had never seen before. Older, way older. His hair almost gray. His hands resting calmly on a cane. And his eyes. They didn't look at me like a stranger. They looked at me like he already owned me. I froze. My heart dropped. I whispered, "Who is he?" No one answered. My mother finally spoke, casually, like she was discussing groceries. "That's your husband." I laughed. Actually laughed. Because there was no way. This had to be some sick joke. But then, my father stood up, didn't even look at me, and said, "The engagement is canceled." Everything inside me went silent. Not loud, not dramatic, just empty. Our eyes finally spoke, but he didn't defend me. He didn't fight for me. He just said, "I didn't know it would happen like this." And that was it. That was the moment I realized I was never part of the plan. The older man stood up slowly, walked toward me, every step echoing in my chest. And then he said something so calmly, it terrified me more than shouting ever could. "You don't have to worry. Everything is already signed." Signed? What was signed? I turned to my mother, my voice shaking. "What did you do?" She didn't even hesitate. She looked straight into my eyes and said, "I fixed your life." Fixed? She called this fixing? That's when the man pulled out a file, placed it on the table, and opened it like this was a business deal, because to them, it was. My name, my signature, on a contract I had never seen before. I stepped back. No, I never signed this. My father finally looked at me and said something that broke something inside me forever. "You don't remember because you trusted us." They had used my documents, my ID, my trust, to sign me away. I couldn't breathe, not because I was crying, but because something inside me had just died quietly. And then the worst part came. The man leaned closer and whispered, "You should be grateful. Your family needed this." Needed what? That's when my mother said it, like it meant nothing. He cleared all our debts. Everything made sense. The sudden calm in the house, the expensive food, the forced smiles. I wasn't getting engaged. I was being traded. I looked at our eyes one last time, hoping, praying he would say something, anything, but he just looked down and stayed silent. That silence was louder than betrayal. I walked to my room slowly, closed the door, and sat on the floor. No tears, no screaming, just silence. Because deep inside, I knew something they didn't. They thought they had trapped me. They thought I had no way out. But they didn't know about the envelope hidden inside my drawer. the one thing I never told anyone about. I opened it, my hands shaking, pulled out the paper, and read the same line. That changed everything. If they ever try to control you, use this. My breath stopped, because underneath that sentence was something I had never fully understood until now. A legal document, signed stamped, years ago, and the name on it was not mine. It was someone else's. Someone my parents never wanted me to find. And at that exact moment, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it for a long time. Then I answered. Before I could say anything, a man's voice came through, calm, controlled, and he said, "I was wondering how long it would take for you to call me." My heart started pounding again, because I never called anyone. So, how did he know? And then he said something that made my entire world shift. "Don't worry, I already know what they did to you." Silence. "Now tell me, do you want your life back, or do you want revenge?" I couldn't speak, not because I didn't have words, but because for the first time, someone wasn't asking me to obey, he was asking me to choose. My fingers tightened around the phone. My voice came out barely a whisper. "What do you mean?" A soft chuckle from the other side, not mocking, not cruel, just certain. "I mean," he paused, letting every second stretch. "Do you want to go back out there and become their solution? Or do you want to become their problem?" Something inside me shifted, slowly, painfully, like a door that had been locked my whole life, finally opening. I closed my eyes, and for the first time, I didn't think about what my parents wanted. I didn't think about fear. I didn't think about shame. I thought about everything they took from me. My voice, my choices, my future. And then I said it. "I want everything back." Silence for 2 seconds. Then his tone changed. Not calm anymore. Sharp. Focused. Like he had been waiting for exactly that answer. "Good. Then listen carefully." I stood up slowly, heart racing, but not with fear anymore. With something new. Control. Walk back into that room. Smile. And say yes. My body froze. Yes. Yes. Let them think they won. Every instinct in me screamed no, but something deeper, something smarter, told me this was the first move. "Why?" I whispered. His answer came instantly. "Because you don't destroy people from outside. You destroy them from inside their own victory." My heart started beating faster, not from fear this time, but from something dangerous. Understanding. I opened the door, walked back into the living room. Every eye turned to me. My mother waiting, my father tense, the old man already confident. I looked at all of them and smiled. The same girl they thought they controlled, smiling like nothing happened. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I just needed a moment." My mother relaxed instantly. Of course she did. She thought I broke. Then I said it. "I agree." Silence. Then relief spread across their faces. My father let out a breath. My mother actually smiled. And the old man, he looked at me like he had just bought something expensive. But this time, I didn't feel owned. Because now, I knew something they didn't. This wasn't surrender. This was strategy. The rest of the evening felt like a performance. Tea was served, Fake laughter filled the room, and I played my role perfectly. Every smile calculated, every word controlled. But inside, I was counting seconds, counting mistakes, counting everything I could use later. That night, after everyone left, my mother came into my room. She sat beside me, touched my hair. "You did the right thing." I didn't respond, because for the first time, I saw her clearly, not as my mother, but as someone who traded me. She leaned closer and whispered, "One day you'll thank me." I almost smiled, but not for the reason she thought, because I knew one day she would beg me. As soon as she left, I locked the door, picked up my phone. "He believed it," I whispered. The man on the other side didn't sound surprised. Of course he did. People like him don't expect resistance. "Now," he continued, "we begin. What do I do?" There was a pause, longer this time. Then he said something that made my entire body go cold. "First, I need you to tell me, how much did he pay for you?" I swallowed hard. Everything, the house, debts, loans, all cleared. A quiet exhale. Then we're not dealing with a marriage. We're dealing with a transaction. And transactions can be reversed. My heart skipped. How? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked something else. "Did they tell you his name?" I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "No." "Good. Because that means you're not the only one who doesn't know everything." Something about that sentence felt important. Then he gave me the first real step. "Tomorrow, you're going to visit him." My breath caught. Alone. Fear tried to come back. But this time, it didn't stay. "Okay. And when you're there, look for one thing." "What?" His voice dropped, low, serious. "The one thing he's hiding from everyone. Every powerful man has one. And once you find it, that's when you stop being the girl they sold and become the woman who owns the deal." The call ended. I sat there, in the dark, heart racing, but not from fear anymore. From something else. Something dangerous. Something they never expected. Hope. The next morning, I got ready, not like a victim, but like someone walking into a war, where no one else knew the battle had already begun. And as I stepped out of the house, my mother smiled proudly, thinking she had secured my future. But what she didn't know was, by this time tomorrow, everything she built on my sacrifice would start to collapse, because I was finally ready to find out who I really belonged to, and why that man on the phone already knew my entire life. The car ride to his house felt unreal, not because I was scared, but because everything inside me was too calm. Like my mind had already accepted something. My heart was still trying to understand. I kept hearing his voice in my head, "Find what he's hiding." So I stopped thinking like a daughter, stopped thinking like a victim, and started thinking like someone who had nothing left to lose. When the gates opened, I realized this wasn't just a house. It was a fortress. Tall walls, security cameras everywhere, guards who didn't even look surprised to see me. Of course they weren't surprised, because to them, I was already part of the deal. The driver opened the door for me, and I stepped out slowly. Every step felt like I was walking deeper into something I didn't fully understand yet. He was waiting inside, sitting exactly how I saw him yesterday, calm, composed, like nothing in the world could touch him. He didn't smile when he saw me. He just studied me. "You came." Not a question, a statement. I said I would. He nodded slightly, like he respected that. "Sit." I sat across from him, close enough to see every detail. His hands steady, his eyes sharp, his presence heavy. This man wasn't weak, which meant whatever he was hiding had to be big. Tea was served. Silence filled the room, but not uncomfortable silence, the kind that tests you. Finally, he spoke. "You don't look scared." I looked straight at him. "I was yesterday. And today." I paused, then said something even I didn't expect. "Today, I'm paying attention." For the first time, a small reaction crossed his face. Not surprise. Interest. Good. He leaned back slightly. "Because you should be." His tone changed, just a little. Less like an owner, more like someone evaluating. "You understand what this is, right?" I nodded slowly. "It's not a marriage." He watched me closely. Then he said something that confirmed everything. "No, that's not." Silence again. But this time, it felt different. Because now, we both knew. We weren't pretending anymore. I looked around the room, casually. But inside, I was searching. Every detail, every movement, every possibility. Then I saw it. Not something obvious. Not something loud. Something hidden in plain sight. A photo frame. On a side table. Turned slightly away from view. That was the first mistake. Because people only hide things they don't want others to ask about. I stood up slowly, walked toward it, picked it up, and that's when everything changed. My hands froze, because the person in that photo was me. Not recently. Years ago. A childhood picture. A picture I didn't even know existed. My breath got stuck. I turned slowly and looked at him. His eyes were already on me, watching, waiting. "Where did you get this?" My voice wasn't steady anymore, because something inside me was starting to connect. Something I wasn't ready to accept yet. He didn't answer immediately. He just stood up, walked toward me, and stopped just close enough. Then he said it. "You've grown." My heart dropped, not because of the words, but because of how he said them, like he had been watching for a long time. "Answer me," I said, stronger this time. "Where did you get this?" He looked at the photo, then back at me, and finally, he said something that made everything inside me collapse. I was there the day it was taken. Silence. My mind went blank, because that was impossible. I had never seen him before. Never. So how? "That's not possible," I whispered. But he didn't argue. He just said, "You don't remember, but you will." A chill ran through my entire body, because suddenly, this wasn't about a deal anymore. This wasn't about money. This was about something far deeper, something my parents never told me. I stepped back, my heart racing again, but this time, not from fear of him, from fear of the truth. Who are you? My voice cracked. For the first time, he didn't look powerful. He looked tired, like he had been waiting for this exact moment. Then he said it, slowly, carefully. I was hoping they would tell you themselves. A pause. They didn't, did they? I shook my head, barely breathing. And then he finally said the one sentence that split my entire life into before and after. I'm not the man who bought you. Another pause. His eyes locked into mine. I'm the man they took you from. Everything went silent, because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. The deal was never about selling me. It was about getting me back. But why? And what did my parents do that they never wanted me to know? My phone buzzed suddenly. I looked down. Same unknown number. The man on the phone. I answered slowly. Didn't say a word. He spoke first. Tell me, did you find it? I swallowed hard. My eyes still locked on the man in front of me. And I whispered, he knows me. Silence on the other end. Then, for the first time, the man on the phone didn't sound in control. What? I took a shaky breath and said the one thing that changed the game completely. He says, they took me from him. Dead silence. Then, a very slow, very dangerous whisper. That means... And he didn't even finish the sentence, because we both understood something was very, very wrong. My hand started shaking, not because I was weak, but because everything I believed about my life was starting to break piece by piece. The man in front of me didn't move, didn't rush. He just watched me, like he knew this moment would come. The phone was still at my ear, the other man silent now, waiting. I swallowed hard and finally asked the question. Who took me? The man in front of me closed his eyes, just for a second, like the answer cost him something. Then he said it. Your parents. Everything inside me snapped. No, I whispered. No, that doesn't make sense. But deep down, something already knew, because suddenly memories started shifting. Small things, tiny details that never made sense before. Why I had no baby pictures before a certain age. Why my mother always avoided questions about my birth. Why my father never spoke about the hospital. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was hiding. My chest felt tight. Why? The man looked at me, and for the first time, I saw pain in his eyes. They couldn't have children. My heart dropped, and he paused, then continued. I could. Silence. My mind tried to reject it, but it kept connecting. They worked for me. Every word felt heavier than the last. They were trusted, and one day, his voice lowered. You disappeared. I felt dizzy, like the ground wasn't real anymore. You're lying, I said weakly, but it didn't sound like anger. It sounded like fear. Because if this was true, then everything I called family, was a lie. He didn't argue. He just walked to a drawer, opened it, and pulled something out. A file. Old, worn, but protected, like it mattered. He handed it to me. Read it. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, photos, hospital documents, a birth certificate with my name, but not my parents' names. His. My breath stopped because the signature was real, stamped, verified, legal. And then the final piece, a police report, child missing. Date. The same year my parents told me I was born. I couldn't breathe anymore. Tears finally came, but not loud, just silent, like everything else that had been taken from me. The phone slipped slightly from my hand, but I didn't hang up. The man on the other side finally spoke again. Low, tense. Is it true? I couldn't even answer properly. Yes, I whispered. Silence. Then something changed. His tone darkened. Then they didn't just sell you. A pause. They stole you first. My heart pounded violently, because suddenly everything made sense. The deal, the money, the urgency. It wasn't just about debt. It was about covering something up. For years, decades. And now it was coming back to destroy them. I wiped my tears slowly because something inside me was changing again, not breaking this time, becoming stronger, colder. I looked at the man in front of me. My parents. I stopped myself. No, not my parents. They. My voice hardened. What do they think this deal is? He didn't hesitate. They think they're getting protection. A small pause. They think I won't expose them if they give you back quietly. I laughed. Not loud, but sharp. They really thought this would stay quiet? His eyes locked into mine. They were hoping you wouldn't find out. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that sounded like them. Hide everything. Control everything. Silence everything. But not anymore. I picked up the phone again. My voice steady now. What happens next? The man on the other side didn't hesitate this time. Now, a slow breath. We stop reacting. And we start ruining them. Something inside me smiled. Not happiness. Not relief. Something darker. Something earned. I looked at the man in front of me. The one who wasn't my buyer, but my real father. And for the first time, I didn't feel lost. I felt positioned. Because now, I wasn't just a girl they sold. I wasn't just a daughter they stole. I was the one thing they never planned for. The truth. And truth doesn't stay buried. My phone tightened in my grip. Tell me what to do. The voice on the other side lowered. Come dangerous. First, we make them feel safe. A pause. Then, we take everything they built on your life. I closed my eyes for a second and whispered, okay. Because this time, I wasn't choosing survival. I was choosing revenge. And this time, it wasn't going to be quiet. Because by the time they realize what they really lost, it won't just be me. It will be everything. I didn't go home that night. Not to that house. Not to those people. Because once you see the truth, You can't walk back into a lie and pretend it still feels like home. I stayed there, in the same place, where everything began, not as a guest, not as a bride, but as something else. The next morning, I called her, my mother. She picked up instantly. Where are you? No concern, no warmth, just control. I stayed here, I said calmly. Silence for half a second. Then tension. That's not appropriate. I almost smiled. Appropriate? After everything they did. That was her concern. I agreed to the marriage. I let the words sit, then added, I'm just adjusting. She relaxed. Of course she did, because she still believed I was playing her game. Good, she said. You're finally understanding. Understanding? No. I was calculating. Come home tonight, she ordered. I paused, then said softly, No. Silence. Sharp, heavy. What do you mean, no? I mean, I leaned back, calm, steady. I'm not coming back. Her voice changed instantly. From control to panic. You don't get to decide that. I closed my eyes, just for a second, and let everything settle. Then I said the one thing that started breaking her. You didn't give me that right, remember? Silence. Deep. Because she understood. I knew. Everything. Where did you hear that? She whispered. There it was. Fear. Real fear. I saw the file. Another pause. Longer this time. Then her voice dropped. Cold. Dangerous. You shouldn't have gone through his things. His things? I laughed softly. He's not a stranger. A breath caught on the other end, and I delivered the final hit. He's my father. The call didn't end immediately. She didn't scream, didn't deny it. She just went silent. And that silence told me everything. You don't understand, she finally said. No, I whispered. You don't. Then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't wait for permission. I didn't wait for approval. I just acted. The next move wasn't emotional. It was precise. The man on the phone, the one who had been guiding me, he had already prepared everything. Today, he told me, we don't expose them. A pause. We corner them. And that's exactly what we did. By evening, they were sitting in a lawyer's office, confused, nervous, thinking this was still under control, until I walked in, not alone, but with him, my real father, and behind us, the man from the phone, the one they never expected, because the moment they saw him, everything changed. My father, no, the man who raised me, went pale instantly, because he recognized him. Of course he did. You, he whispered. The man on the phone smiled slightly. Calm, confident. Long time. My mother's hands started shaking, because now, the truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was sitting right in front of them. Let's not waste time, the lawyer said, and placed the documents on the table. Charges. Kidnapping. Fraud. Identity manipulation. Everything. Years of lies. Turned into evidence. My mother tried to speak, tried to control it, but her voice broke. You said you wouldn't. She looked at my real father, desperate. You promised. He didn't even look at her. That was before. A pause. She knew. Silence. Heavy. Final. My father, the one who raised me, looked at me. For the first time. Not with authority. Not with control. But with fear. Real fear. You're really going to do this? I looked straight at him. And for a moment, all the memories came back. The small kindness, the rare smiles, the moments that almost felt real. And I almost hesitated. But then I remembered everything else. The lies, the control, the moment they sold me, like I was nothing. And just like that, the hesitation disappeared. You already did this, I said quietly. I'm just finishing it. The room went silent, because everyone understood. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was consequence. The lawyer pushed the papers forward. Sign, he said. Or don't. It didn't matter anymore, because the truth was already enough. My mother broke first, crying, begging, saying my name, like it still meant something. But I didn't move, didn't respond, because that name, the one she gave me, was never really mine. And now, I finally understood who I was. Not the girl they raised, not the daughter they controlled, but the truth they tried to bury. And as they signed, hands shaking, world collapsing, I felt something I never felt before. Peace. Not loud, not overwhelming, just quiet, because for the first time, my life belonged to me. And as we walked out, the man on the phone looked at me and asked one last question. So, a small pause. What now? I looked ahead, not back, never back, and said softly, now, I live. The first night after everything ended, I didn't sleep, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't know who I was supposed to be anymore. No lies left, no roles left, no one controlling my next step. Just me. I sat by the window, watching the city breathe, lights flickering, people moving, everyone living their lives, like nothing had changed. But mine had been erased and rewritten in a single day. The man, my real father, didn't force anything, didn't ask me to call him father, didn't expect anything from me. And somehow, that made it harder, because I wasn't used to freedom. Days passed, slowly, carefully, like I was learning how to walk again. I started noticing things, small things, choices. What to eat, what to wear, where to go. Things that used to feel normal now felt powerful. But healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with music or dramatic moments. It comes quietly, in the space where pain used to live. One evening, I stood in front of the mirror again. Same reflection, but not the same girl. I touched my face, and for the first time, I didn't see someone broken. I saw someone rebuilt. My phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. For a second, my heart paused. Old habits. Old fear. But then, I smiled slightly, because I wasn't that girl anymore. I opened it, One line. We made a mistake. No name. No explanation. But I knew. Of course I knew. I stared at the message for a long time before I typed back. Just 2 words. No, you didn't. I hit send and blocked the number. No anger. No revenge left. Just closure. Because they didn't make a mistake. They made a choice. And now they were living with it. And I was finally free from it. Weeks later, I visited the old house. Not to go back. Just to end it properly. The gate was locked. The garden neglected. The place that once felt like everything now looked empty. Just walls. Just silence. I stood there for a few seconds, then turned around and walked away. No tears. No hesitation. Because I wasn't leaving something behind. I was leaving nothing. And that's when it finally hit me. The truth wasn't painful anymore. It was liberating. Because now there was nothing left to lose. Which meant there was everything left to build. That night, I sat with my real father. Across the table. Not as strangers. Not as family yet. But as 2 people. Connected by truth. He looked at me, careful, like he didn't want to break something fragile. I don't expect anything from you, he said quietly. And I believed him. For the first time, I believed someone. I know, I replied. A small silence. Then I added, but I'm not running anymore either. His eyes softened. Not with relief, but with respect. And that's when I realized this wasn't the end of something. This was the beginning. Not of revenge, not of pain, but of something real, something chosen, something mine. And as I stood up, walking toward a future no one had written for me, I finally understood something. They tried to control my life. They tried to rewrite my identity. They even tried to sell my future. But in the end, they gave me something they never intended to. A reason to become unstoppable. And this time, no one was taking that away from me.